Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and we're back with some more Total War Warhammer 3 gameplay. We've looked at all the base game races and factions, and now we have to start looking towards magic, as obviously new races, especially of the magical variety, bring new forms of magic with them. So with this series of videos I want to go over each individual lore of magic, what spells are there, and how to use those spells. We're going to start off with the Lore of Slaanesh, as, well, I'm just adding in some favoritism here because you guys know that this is my favorite faction. So with all that being said, let's not waste any more time and jump right in. We'll start off with the Lash of Sunshine and work our way clockwise. So the Lash of Sunshine is a breath weapon which does damage in a single swipe, is both magical and also does armor piercing damage. This is one of the cheapest spells that you have available to you and doesn't get too expensive when you decide to overcast it. It's not a high damage value spell, but it is very good against, say for example, hordes, anything that's kind of scrunched up in a specific line. The description says it's an expanding tear shape, and you can see that on screen with how it's supposed to kind of break out. However, it kind of looks different and looks like it functions different when you actually put the spell to use. I'll be testing it out on Peasant Longspearmen, as they are pretty much becoming my tester unit for Warhammer 3, so here I'm just going to hold them down with some demonettes, just keep them into place, as this spell really relies on having your enemies being as stationary as possible. But as you can see here, as we get ready to cast, it doesn't look like it does expand too much. In fact, it just looks like it's a basic straight line. Damage-wise, it's not too bad. Keep in mind that obviously these are Peasant Longspearmen. They're the weakest units, I think, in the whole game at the moment, so you're not going to really get too much out of it. The armor piercing will do more or less the same damage when it comes to, say for example, Chaos Warriors and so on, so the output is still very, very possible. Obviously the overcasted version does more damage, but as you can see, you don't really get a lot of an area to do damage, so if you can block them up, if you can blob up your enemies and, say for example, a choke point and so on, it'll be very useful, but I don't imagine this being your go-to spell unless you pretty much have no other spells. Next we have Phantasmagoria, which is a multi-purpose spell. This reduces the leadership of your targeted enemy units, but also stops them from moving, so you can either use it to stop something that's trying to fly away, or trying to take off, or you can obviously use it for the reduction of leadership, as this becomes very useful for Slaaneshi tactics. It's pretty much tied to your faction as a whole. As you may be aware, there are some effects where if your enemy starts to waver, some of your demons will get stronger, so obviously you want to have their leadership tanking as much as possible. Keep in mind the following: positioning is very important, as here I did it on the Lord Magistrate, but it didn't affect any other units. Now that's fine, as the Lord was able to hold out because I was trying to use these spells to showcase, and I didn't want the Lord coming in, as he would have done too much damage to the demonettes anyway. So keeping him in position wasn't too bad of an option. Now eventually I am able to cast this again, as I do have multiple spellcasters, and I was able to do that on a group of Longspearmen which was fighting some demonettes, with my demonettes surrounding them, which obviously starts tanking their leadership, and Phantasmagoria adding to further effect. This is quite good for these types of situations, and I've been using it a lot myself through my Sunish playthroughs and so on, because obviously we're glass cannon, we need to be able to tank their leadership as much as possible. While the spell itself might not look or sound too impressively, believe me, it is quite useful, and I have been seeing the purpose of it through a lot of my campaigns. Sunish is so glass cannon that you need to be able to hold down enemies so you can work around their flank. Visually, however, it's actually really impressive. It's hallucinogenic demons showing up and kind of attacking the enemy to make the leadership go down. I think it's one of the prettiest spells in terms of visual, which, yes, I know that doesn't work for everyone, but hey, aesthetics kind of work, and hey, I like it. The next spell is Acquiescence, and this is a hex spell which reduces the speed and melee defense of a target. If you decide to overcast the spell too, it further reduces the speed of said target. This is very useful for either pinning down anything that might be quick, but then again, you're playing as Slaanesh, so nothing will be too quick, or if you decide to, say for example, deal with something heavily armored like Chaos Warriors of Khorne, which you'll be able to reduce their melee defense. That's always useful. Yes, you have a lot of armor piercing stuff and so on, but the reduction to melee defense will make them much easier to start slicing about. So for this, I decided to test it out against some Celestial Dragon Guard, as they are one of the strongest melee units. They're also very heavily armored, they've got halberds, they can dish out some damage, and I've got a bunch of demonettes swarming them. You see, the melee defense, even being attacked from multiple sides, is going to make them start melting, as you can see here. My demonettes are one of my lowest tier units, and they're able to start just ripping apart these units without too much of an issue. I'll be honest with you, the melee reduction is great, but again, like I said before, speed reduction makes no sense whatsoever for Slaanesh. You can catch up to anything. All your cavalry pretty much has 100 speed. Your fastest stuff is 110 speed, which is obviously your Chaos Furies. There's nothing that's going to outrun you. Like, as far as I've tested, there's literally nothing that's going to outrun you. Next is Pervain of Slaanesh, and this is a direct damage-causing spell, which is useful against big amounts of entities. Anything that pretty much has more than 25 men or above, as you can see, and overcasting it increases its effect duration. It also has the chance not only of doing a decent amount of damage, as you can see the damage per second values, but also can make the enemy rampage. So again, we're going to use it on the Celestial Dragon Guard, as they are one of the strongest Cathayan multi-entity units, and as you can see here, it does a lot of damage. I've got multiple spellcasters, obviously, so we can test this over and over, and as you can see, the damage values just from multiple castings pretty much whittles away to the point that they're not going to be a threat whatsoever. Rampage itself will make the enemy break their line and charge at you, which isn't too needed. I mean, it does help if you want to move around and just work around them, but as you can see, the damage it does is pretty good. It isn't a spell that you'd be using a lot, because there are some better spells, and it will be very obvious soon, but if you're dealing with something that might just be a bit too much of an issue, especially against your very low armored troops, this does help. Next we have Hysterical Frenzy, which is an augment spell, which increases armor-piercing weapon damage, melee attack, but also has a chance of rampage. While also overcasting it will increase armor-piercing damage. This is obviously very useful, as there's a lot of heavily armored stuff, you know, not only just Khorne, but also Kislev, Cathay. Eventually we're going to be fighting against more Warriors of Chaos too, so that's going to be needed too. The Empire, Britonia, pretty much everyone is wearing armor, whilst you're really just wearing bikinis. Testing it out once again against some Celestial Dragon Guard and only one unit of Demonettes, you can see that even the Demonettes, which, well, you know, not the best unit but not the worst, were able to do a decent amount of damage on them. As long as I kept the buff up, they pretty much took them on head first, which is quite impressive considering, you know, tier 1 or tier 0 versus tier 3, tier 4. It makes the Demonettes very, very vicious, and I can only imagine how it's going to make, say, for example, the Exalted Demonettes, which are much stronger, or, say, for example, Fiends. This was just using the weakest because I want to showcase the capabilities of the spells itself. The last one is Slicing Shards. This is a bombardment spell that pretty much does quite a lot of damage. I'm actually quite impressed with this. I wasn't expecting it to be so useful, as you can see, it's got a large strike area, and if you overcast it, it will do increased armor-piercing damage. Again, with bombardments, you want to be able to scrunch up your enemies as much as possible to be able to get the maximum effect out of it, and yeah, like, let's check it out. I'm actually quite impressed. So again, we got some Demonettes, and yes, favoritism is a thing, against some Peasant Long Spearmen, and you can see that the damage is quite good, depending obviously how you place it and so on, but I've been able to pretty much delete units without too much of an issue. Placement is a key. And in some cases, I'm probably not the best at using these types of spells. However, I was quite impressed. I've been using it a lot in my campaigns, as it can delete the weaker ones. It's still pretty good against, say, for example, the stronger ones if you overcast it more than anything, but the damage output is good. This is a rather powerful spell, probably one of the best. No, it definitely is the best for the Slaaneshi roster at the very least. Just scrunch up your enemies as much as you can and unleash hell. If you've got multiple casters, you can do this multiple times and just pretty much delete anything that's there. But obviously now we have to move on to the passive ability, as that forms part of the lore. This is Blissful Rapture, which is a augment area of effect that increases melee attack and leadership to those around, meaning that you'll want to keep your spellcasters near. And it shouldn't be too much of a problem because, yes, they're wearing bikinis, yes, they're kind of squishy, however, you can get Seeker Chariots, Exalted Seeker Chariots, they're able to get close, do damage, and have not too much of an issue, though if you want to keep them further away, Estate of Slaanesh works out pretty well too. But that's it when it comes to the lore of Slaanesh. Like I said in previous videos, Slaanesh is definitely the hardest faction to play, at least from my experience, and you don't really have a lot of good spells, though they can be very useful, situational at the very least. It does fit very well. It is very, very lore friendly if you're wondering. Perhaps some changes could come to some spells in the future which might make it a little bit more worth it, but other than that, I'd say that everything kind of works as intended. The Lash definitely needs a bit of a damage boost because it doesn't really spread out as far as the actual spell says, though. That's my only real complaint. But what do you guys think about the lore of Slaanesh? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below and let's start a bit of a discussion. I'm rather curious to see what you guys think about my favorite Chaos God. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description section below are various links to different social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Discord. Also in the description section is an affiliate link with Element Games where you could buy loads of hobby-based products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off. Making a purchase using that link and also our special code, which is also in the description, supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which we think is rather cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. It's amazing that people want to help a small channel like us grow and get to a higher level of content. A big thank you to Gibraltar LUSC, Ryan Bertsche, Andrew Prince, and Okro for subscribing to us at our Fane level. You guys are super cool. And a big thank you to Edward Yule, VS Vasan, Aaron Whitman, and Shaggy for subscribing to us at our King level. Honestly, we can't thank you all enough. And lastly, a big thank you to all of you for liking, sharing, and commenting on these videos. Honestly, it's because of you guys that the channel's been growing at such a great pace lately, so we can't thank you all enough. But with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching once again, and we shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.